Welcome to Lindzanity. I'm excited to have my friend Paul Grinberg, who's a partner in our funds and also a storied long career in the financial industry, and most famous for, at least to me, is traveling the world and getting to eat at the 100 best restaurants in the world, and we're going to talk about those stories coming up. Welcome, Paul. Welcome back from Tokyo. We're in Phoenix, Arizona. You've got probably a little jet lag.
Or a lot of jet lag, but either way.
So Paul, welcome to Lindzanity. You're a little bit familiar with Lindzanity because you've been an LP in all three of our funds.
All three funds,
so,
yeah.
So I want to thank you. We never get to hang out much in person. Mm-hmm. Where are you living these days?
I'm spending most of my time in Lake Tahoe, Incline Village, Nevada.
So like every good American who's made a little bit of money, you're trying to get out of California.
I am. And when I make some more money, I will not be paying 13.3% of that to the California government.
Yes. So we'll get into the California government maybe at some point. But I want to give people a little bit of background. You are currently chairman of the board of Axos Financial.
Yes.
It's a San Diego bank. It was called, people will know it as Bank of the Internet. It's
that's right.
Almost a $2 billion bank. And I want to talk a lot about...
$2 billion market cap.
$2 billion market cap.
$10 billion asset.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. And you've been on the board there since 2004?
Yes.
Okay. And you just left. You were president of Encore Capital Group. You were there how many years?
14.
So quickly, Encore Capital Group.
Purchaser of non-performing consumer debt in the U.S., Europe, Latin America, Asia.
And your job was just traveling around the world?
My job was expanding the business outside of the U.S. and then managing whatever we bought outside of the U.S.
And how many people at Encore?
7,000 or something like that.
Wow. And you got 3 kids. Everybody's in California.
Grown up, yeah, doing their own thing. And
so you're an empty nester like me. I think your claim to fame, 250 days a year on the road?
275.
At your peak or this year?
Last 6 years, probably, on average.
So how does the government look at, software people, we all, like engineers, the world that young people live in, they travel for fun, and you travel for business. It's almost a dead thing. How do you claim residency if you're traveling 275?
It's wherever your primary home is. So at the time, it was in California, so it was California.
That made no sense then. If you're spending 50 days a year at home, don't make it California your home.
That's right. Yeah, don't take my advice in terms of where to domicile yourself when you're traveling.
And before this, you were a partner at Deloitte in mergers and acquisitions. So for my audience, like the investing audience, it's like a perfect background to kind of lead off into Lindzanity, whether you think so or not, because you've got that like training that puts you down on that path. And, how important was it? We talk about, at least young people today talk about, being entrepreneurs and software's eating the world, and there's no balance sheets anymore. It's like depreciation and engineers.
Mm-hmm. No earnings anymore either.
Well, I'm not going to get into that. And there's different types of compensation. No one can read any of this stuff, so it's become a game. Financial statements. So we could delve into that, but then we would probably just confuse everybody. But how important was learning at Deloitte for what you did?
It was a great background, and also
where'd you go to school? You went to school at before that.
Undergrad was Yeshiva University, and I got my MBA at Columbia in New York. Okay. So the Deloitte thing was great. Also, I spent 10 years as CFO of Encore and another 7 or 8 years as CFO of other companies. So that deep financial experience was really great to learn how to manage a business, because you understood the financials that went behind the business, and you could think strategically from a financial perspective about how to drive businesses and make them successful.
And so now, how old are you? 50 no.
57. That's right.
So I think this is interesting because we talk about it all the time now. You're retired, but not really. You just retired from Encore
at the end of the year. That's right.
At the end of the year, kids are out of the house. You're prime. You work out. You take care of yourself. So you want to you're just getting going in a way.
I'm starting to have some fun.
Yeah. So the fun thing that you did, which is really, I'm excited to go through this because this is like so different is you're a foodie. We met the first time over sushi at Hane Sushi.
Hane Sushi in San Diego.
So Hane Sushi is one of my favorite restaurants now. We were introduced by a third party. I don't even remember his name. Stefan. Which company was he?
He was doing his own little incubator thing at the time. I'm not sure what he's up to right now.
So we met over sushi. It's still my favorite restaurant because I'm not a foodie in the sense of like I won't go to a location. And I'll inquire about good restaurants, but I don't go to that many different cities. So when I'm in San Diego, that's my favorite place. And then, so we met there. You just finished up. You're coming back from Tokyo after eating at the world's 50 best restaurants of 2017. So where did this idea come from, and what was the driving force of the whole thing?
Well,
so
actually,
just walk us through that.
Yeah, well, the world's 50 best restaurants is, they publish a list every year of the 100 best restaurants in the world. Why they chose to call it world's 50 best instead of world's 100 best, not so clear.
Yeah.
And so at some point, I had dined at a number of those restaurants, probably 10 or 15 of them, and they were all fantastic. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to do the top 50 in that list.
And it's spread across every continent?
5 continents. They're in 35 countries, 100+ cities. They're all over the place.
And has anybody ever done that?
A few people have done the top 50. And then at some point I was working towards the top 50. I had a couple more to do. They were in Russia and South Africa. And then they changed the list on me. And the ones
because 2018 happened?
Because the next year happened, and a bunch.
What's the overlap? What's the turnover on that?
There's probably 15-20% turnover or something like that. So then I was either done or I was going to do something different. I decided, let's just do all 100.
Okay.
So I, probably 2 years ago, I decided to do all 100, and so the last couple of years I've added probably another 60 restaurants to my list in another 35 cities all over the place.
And your job allowed you to do this, but this was still out of pocket because you were going to weird places on weekends and organizing family trips around these things.
Yeah, I've flown 12 hours for dinner and then turned around and flown back the next day. No, that was
so where'd you go
Hong
12
Kong.
Hours for dinner and back the next day?
I flew to Hong Kong for dinner and then flew out the next day.
And? Was it worth that?
That specific restaurant was pretty good. Hong Kong's a great city. So
for food.
If I had stayed there a few more days, maybe that would have
made
sense.
So the food wasn't that memorable?
No, the food was good, but it was, doing anything just for flying anywhere for 12 hours, it's got to be pretty spectacular.
Okay, so you've got this as Wall Street Journal. What's funny is the Wall Street Journal picked up the story.
Right.
How did they pick up the story? Because you're not promotional, so what was the...
No, I was trying to get into this. There's one restaurant that I was struggling with, a place called Sushi Saito in Tokyo.
And that's in the movie.
Which is...
Is that the documentary about the sushi place?
That's called Jiro.
Okay.
That's easy to get. It's easy to get into Jiro.
Okay. He's whored himself out at this point.
It's not easy to get into Saito. 8 seats, no website, no email, no phone. Well, there's a phone, but he takes calls once a month, and I recruited dozens of people to get on the phone for hours. They never got through. So I that was my goal, was to get into this one restaurant, and I couldn't. So I started doing something that I never did in my life. As an officer of a public company, I stayed away from social media at all costs.
Right.
I didn't want any of that.
Yep.
But I had to get into the restaurant, so I started posting on Instagram. And it got around. The story got around.
But that was legal to be able to post on Instagram? I guess it's just photos.
No, just posting food pictures.
Got it.
And the Wall Street Journal and a bunch of other news outlets got a hold of the story and thought it'd be fun to write about some finance guy who's traveling around the world eating and just can't seem to get into that 100th restaurant.
But he liked the story better without you getting into the restaurant.
Yeah, he said don't go.
He covered the story at 99.
Yeah, he said biggest mistake I'd ever make is to go to that 100th restaurant.
Yeah.
Because he's all about the story, not about my goal, obviously. And
so they ran the story. I read the story.
They ran the story.
It's how did they do the research to check that you did that? Did they do any research? Or is it fake news?
They
in an era of fake news, what did they do?
They contacted the organization that publishes the list.
Okay.
And to confirm that I had done that. Now, they never checked to make sure I did, but I think people recognized, they saw my post. They saw all the restaurants I went to.
It on.
I actually keep the menus from all these places. So I have binders and binders of hundreds of menus from all over the world.
Right.
So if I needed to prove it, I could. And no one else came out of the woodwork through all this publicity that they did it. So I think everyone's concluded that I'm the only guy that's done it.
Low end, what would it cost the regular person to try and logistically? So you did it all within a year?
No, it took more than that.
So what do you think, ballpark? Over $1 million to get to all, like in terms of travel and time? I think you're protected in the sense that it would take a certain person, or are there people trying to do this? Is this something people are trying to do?
Lots of people try to do the 50.
Okay.
There hasn't been anyone else who's done 100.
Okay.
There's one guy I know who's got 97 out of the 100. I don't know if he'll do it or not.
And did you ever think of making a show about the whole thing or no?
I thought about writing a book, but I'm not into that. So I just want to enjoy the food, actually.
Okay. And how many of them did you go by yourself?
I probably went to 60 or 70 by myself. I did a lot of them with my kids and with Stephanie, my partner.
Just the Sweden story really interested me, just because it's so in the middle of nowhere. So how do you go to Sweden in this restaurant? What's it called?
The restaurant's called Faviken. It's in a place called Jarpen, Sweden.
Of course.
So, we all know where Jarpen is,
yes.
right?
It's here.
that's right. It's
up there somewhere.
It is up there. So I went from San Francisco to London and then caught a flight to Oslo, Norway, from Oslo to Trondheim, Norway. And then I stayed at a little town right outside the Trondheim airport, and the town's called Hell, Hell, Norway. And apparently there are, I think, 5 or 6 towns in the world called Hell. There are 5 or 6 hells in the world. This is the biggest hell of all the towns.
It's a hellhole.
It's a hell. And then I drove from Hell to Jarpen for dinner, and then back to Hell at night to sleep, which was a lot of fun because I was on conference calls and I would be telling people I'm on the highway to Hell and I've been to Hell and back, and it was quite amusing.
And as someone who traveled the world, what is it? I remember you once showing me a kidnap cart. Is that still a thing where executives have to worry about that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, executives who travel have KRE, kidnap, ransom, and extortion insurance, so that if someone does take you give them the card.
You hand them the card.
They call a phone number, they pay whatever they negotiate, and then hopefully it never happens, so I don't have personal experience with it.
But have you heard of it happening to people? Obviously, it happens.
It happens to people. That's why they sell the insurance.
So it's important to young people, these engineers, these kids at Facebook who just don't know how tough it is out there. You would think that some of these kids are marked now because there's so many haters. But was there any flight over the 200? Have you had a close call, like a plane where you were nervous?
I've
had engine trouble, emergency landing.
I've had a couple where, and I'm sure others have had this, where you're about to land and there's a plane there, and then you suddenly are not landing anymore.
Right.
That's happened 2 or 3 times. I've had engine problems where the plane just can't go fast enough, and there's fear of it stalling, so you have to turn around and go back.
Fear of it stalling after it's taken off?
After it's taken off, that's right.
That'd be scary. Yeah. But no aborted.
Dumping fuel, going back to where you started. But nothing, I still fly. So.
No fear of flying.
I don't sleep on airplanes, so that's my biggest challenge is taking red eyes all over the world and getting there exhausted. So
you just watch movies?
Watch movies, do work, read.
All right, so now let's get to investing, because the whole thesis of this show is Lindzanity.
I have one restaurant investment, by the way.
Oh, do you?
I do.
They're terrible investment. What restaurant?
High-end restaurants are terrible investments.
Yeah.
This one it hasn't opened yet, but it's going to be in LA in a very popular area.
What kind of food?
It'll be sort of mid-tier kind of American, Californian
type cuisine.
And why?
You just know the owner? You know the chef?
It was one of those things that all the investing
You're going to lose money.
And all the restaurants I eat at, I had to own one restaurant.
Okay.
It's all in the lease.
Yeah.
So if it's a good lease and a good team, we'll see.
Yeah, it's not in the lease. It's just you're not going to make money. The only way to make money is to
Will you have me back if I do make money?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to hear about it. Will they let you eat free food? A lot of my friends are doing restaurants, and I just did it. In Phoenix, everybody owns a restaurant, it seems like. And
I want to pay them. I don't want the free food. I want them to be successful. So when I do dine there, I will
I think that was our problem. Everybody just thought it was their restaurant. And Phoenix is just a restaurant town in terms of a lot of new startups. They test ideas here, so I just never had a good experience. What's your favorite type of food?
Sushi's my favorite food.
Yeah, me too. What's the best sushi? Was it Saito that was the best food, or where?
It was fantastic sushi.
But where's the best sushi? Like, if you want to go bang out sushi when you're in the United States,
there's some great places in New York. The places we go to in San Diego are phenomenal.
Yeah. So if you're in San Diego, I would say Hane,
Ken's, Sushi
and Sushi Ota's great.
All great.
And it's kind of that whole neighborhood. They've spun it off themselves.
They've got three or four
different
places.
people. Do they own all of them, or do they?
They're similar. The guys who run the place own most of it, but they've got some investments from
one of the things I miss most about not living this. I would go once a week. That was my treat of going to those places.
I used to eat it so much that I tested myself for mercury, and I had 8 times the level of mercury in my body.
And what could that possibly mean?
It means I had to stop eating sushi for about a year.
Because you get cancer or something?
No, mercury poisoning can impact your memory and how you think and brain function and organ function.
I may have that. I always just thought it was the ambient.
Now you have the reason.
Holy smokes! I'm going to lay off the sushi. All right, so let's talk about money and investing. You were there, 2008, and the world was coming to an end. You're you were a board member at a bank, and it was a small bank. Bank of the Internet is a branchless bank in Axos now. They just rebranded. Is a branchless bank. So tell me a little bit about that business. Because it's a public company. The ticker is now AX, but it used to be
on the New York Stock Exchange.
BOFI.
BOFI.
And it had a great run post 2008, post the crisis. But I just want to go back to, back when there were banks. Kids today is like Robinhood, Chime, all these non-bank banks, and millennials. To that quaint period when things were blowing up. So what was going on in 08, 09? What do you remember about the crisis?
I mean, I actually remember the crisis more from my Encore days when we would go and visit investors, and investors just wouldn't invest in anything. They thought the world was coming to an end. I remember being in Goldman Sachs in New York, and the halls were empty. There was no one around.
But did you think it was coming to an end?
No, look, we're in consumer businesses. They're always going to be consumers.
Right.
Consumers always are going to borrow money. They need it. They need money. So,
but no one was listening.
No one was listening.
Okay.
And all they would do is try to direct how we would manage the business in terms of what their fears were. And we said, look, if you don't like how if you think the consumer is dying, don't buy the stock, but don't tell us not to do our business.
Yeah.
So I think there was a lot of fear there.
Yeah. And so at the bank, you guys, so financing the bank back then, the bank was what price? The bank was like it's up to 30, 40 times since then. But how was it working at the bank?
Well, the bank has always been very prudent in terms of lending. And so the bank never got aggressive as a lot of...
Never needed TARP, did they?
No, never needed TARP. But the bank was primarily at that time a mortgage lender.
Okay.
And people were doing some crazy things, as you know, in mortgage lending. But we never did.
But you're still getting punished.
No, getting punished in terms of the stock price, but not getting punished
being able
in terms
to finance
of the business
and grow the business.
But we were able to continue to grow the business at the time. We were very conservative and prudent in terms of lending practices. So all the other banks took significant loan losses, but we didn't have to because we were very smart about how we lent money.
Right. And so Greg, the CEO, he's been CEO for, I don't know, forever it seems.
10 years or so.
So so there was a different CEO when you started?
There was, yes.
Okay.
And we brought Greg in because we knew the bank, we needed to grow.
Yep.
And Greg was the right guy to help us grow.
And now how big's the bank?
Over $10 billion in assets and making loans and taking deposits all over the country, and got all sorts of interesting products. It's very much focused on technology and being the technology bank.
And so when did you feel like? Because I know you. When did you? Like, how does it work if you're a chairman and you think it's undervalued? Are you allowed to buy the stock, or how does it work back in 08, for example?
It works, same way then as any time. If you've got material information, you can't buy or sell, and if you don't, you can.
Are you interested in the stock market at all?
Sure. I mean, I've got to. If I want to stay retired,
yes,
I've got to make sure that I manage my investments appropriately.
And do you do it by yourself, or do you have an
advisor?
advisor?
I have someone who helps me with it.
And mostly ETFs, or is it individual stock picking?
I do a whole variety of things. So I've got investments in social leverage and all 3 funds of social leverage, and I've got some later stage investments in private equity and some real estate investments and some individual private company investments, and then in the market, individual stocks and various funds. So it's spread in a way to manage risk and to just have enough in different asset classes so that I can feel comfortable that the money's going to be there when I need it.
And traveling the world, where's the most if you were like going to land in a spot and have to restart, like is there a country or an area of the world that's super fascinating or interesting?
There's what I'm not sure I would live there, but Latin America's the middle class is exploding. There's tons of opportunities there.
Not Venezuela.
Not Venezuela, but in general, in terms of financials.
I own a couple of the stocks from in the payment space. Stone
it's blowing up down there. India is, in terms of what's happening in India with the middle class. Again, not a place I would live, but in terms of investing, in terms of exciting things that are happening there, just tons of really.
And you've talked about Colombia. So Colombia, where in Latin America is do you think?
The hotspots. The hotspots are going to be where the big economies are. So Brazil's going to be a hotspot. Mexico certainly.
And what about government, though? So the middle class, is the key thing. You need a burgeoning middle class.
That's exactly right.
And is the government changing enough, or is it, or are we?
You have to watch out for the government because the government can provide opportunity. The government can take everything away too. So again, you have to be very careful.
So fintech in Latin America for sure,
and and Asia. There's so many countries now that don't have an evolved financial system. They don't have the legacy that we have here. So fintech and new technologies are going to blow up, I suspect, over time. And
you spent a lot of time in India as well.
Yeah, at Encore we had a couple thousand people there, so I spent time there. And I'm actually an investor in a fund that's an early stage fund in India that's doing deals in all sorts of spaces.
And so, but you wouldn't live there?
No. If I was going to live somewhere, somewhere in Europe, somewhere, Japan's a fun place to be.
And do you speak other languages?
I speak American.
And how
Sometimes I speak English.
Well, is there any changes in because you travel so much? Any changes in attitude towards Americans that you've noticed?
It's given our current administration. It's interesting.
Is it like you've noticed Americans.
A change? It's. I was in. When I was in Japan a couple weeks ago, I was walking by the government offices, and there was a massive sign that must have been 30 feet by 15 feet that says, "Japan loves Trump."
Huh. So they love him over
And
there.
so there are certain countries that love him, and there are certain countries that hate him. And I've experienced both.
You've experienced both. And in terms of recruiting and everything, as you're at Encore, with millennials and et cetera, have you noticed, what's the change? I know that you said there's WeWorks now for Encore Capital in different parts of the world. What is the biggest difference over the years? Because you were at Encore how many years?
14 years.
Yeah, so you were doing recruiting and hiring and expansion. What's it like working with younger people now versus then? What's the biggest difference?
I think there's less commitment to the organization that they're working for, and they've got a lot of opportunities and lots of an ability to move. And so there's a lot of movement, and doesn't take a lot in terms of financial incentive to get people to move. So there's not necessarily a lot of commitment to any particular organization that I've seen.
And the banking system here, so switching topics, the banking system here, what's changed the most since 2008? And where's your head around fintech in the United States?
It's been a great opportunity. The question is, how much really is... At the end of the day, how much is going to be fintech, and how much do you really need true financial services and banking? So fintech, we've seen what's happened in certain spaces in fintech where they've had to become banks. And valuations have gone from fintech valuations back to financial services and bank valuations. So
good or bad? I think it's great.
It's the reality.
Yeah.
I think the fintech was a dream, and if you lend money, you're not a fintech, you're a bank, or you're a lender, and you're going to get those kinds of valuations. So the question is, will that continue to happen, and what are those companies that can navigate and stay in that fintech space with that valuation and not become a more traditional financial services company.
Are you tech? Do you like tech, or do you look at the financial service and go undervalued, or do you stay at a fintech? Where are you comfortable?
I have to admit, I don't understand it well enough to understand some of these valuations. So I try to stay where I'm comfortable and where I know it, and understand where I can do the math and say, I know what that valuation is all about.
Yeah.
If I can't do the math in my head, then long term it's going to be a struggle for me.
And what are you looking at now? So you want to be on board seats. So obviously, there's all these startups. We've backed over 100 companies. So there's all these startups that they may not understand what it's like to build their first board. What can you tell people about how important boards are or not, or how to structure them? Because I know you want to help out and chip in at the board level a lot of these companies. So what have you seen, the good, the bad, and the ugly? What do people are missing about boards, and where's there things that people can do to make their boards better?
If you've got the right board with the right mix of people that know how to work with the CEO and the management team, it can really help drive the business. If you've got people with the right kinds of experience who've made the mistakes or seen how the mistakes have been made, who've seen how to grow quickly, what infrastructure you need to put in place, what you need to watch out from a regulatory perspective, from a competitive perspective, I think it can really help accelerate a company. So a CEO who has a board that's got the right mix of people, where he can leverage that talent and that knowledge, can really use it to grow his or her business.
But is there any rules in terms of ownership, or where you've seen troubles with like people owning enough of the stock, or like if you were investing in a company, would you look at the board? Forgetting seed stage, but like a public company, do you check who the board is?
Without a doubt.
Okay. What are you looking for mainly what they own of the company, or
their experience, and to what they own. I mean, there are professional boards that are just paid board members in different countries all over the world, and they don't, in my view, don't have enough skin in the game. I think it's important to have skin in the game,
right?
Because then you pay attention. And you're focused on the value that you're creating together with the team and with the rest of the board.
Right. And how many boards can you think you can be on reasonably? Like the venture capitalists, I see guys on 10 to 12 boards. Is that possible?
I don't think. I don't think so. To devote the amount of time that can really help a business, I don't think you can be on more than 4 or 5 boards. And then it depends. Are they public companies? Are they private companies? Are they large? Are they small? There are different levels of commitment depending upon the business and how it's capitalized and whether it's public or private.
Once you've been traveling, is it easy to get off the road, or do you think you're just never going to be able to sit still?
It's hard to sit still. Yeah, I retired at the beginning of the year, and I've been gone out of the country 6 weeks already. And when I'm at home more than a week or so, I'm itching to do something and get somewhere.
Yeah, me too. I wonder if it's a generational thing. You have 3 kids, so they range age
26 to 31.
Are you seeing different behavior patterns? Like, I was cool just sitting around. I wasn't as big. I like traveling, but traveling sucked. Now traveling's so different. So I wonder, are you seeing them loving to travel?
No, I travel a lot more than they do.
Yeah,
and they actually enjoy sticking at home. But I mean, they like traveling and doing fun things, but not regularly, not like I did.
And what's the biggest? I mean, did you book your own travel, or did you have somebody do it?
When I was working full time, I had someone help me. Okay. Generally, I'm pretty anal about that, so I want to know where I'm going and what seat I'm sitting at in the airplane.
Yeah. So what are your like someone who, like, I use Google Flights. I use Hotels Tonight. So I do my own stuff, and then last minute, and I don't like getting charged for changes, so I like to book at the very last minute. And are you able
I'm the
about
opposite of that.
So you want to know weeks out in advance?
Because I'm generally trying to eat at a really nice restaurant when I'm going somewhere.
Even now?
Even now. Yeah, okay. I still enjoy it.
So you plan it around.
So I plan it. So if I know I have to travel, I'm going to do it ahead of time, because sometimes it takes 2 or 3 or 4 months to get a reservation.
But you've already done the top 100. You can't chill and just relax?
There's 130 3-star Michelin restaurants in the world, and I've eaten at 115 of them, and I've got 15 or 20 more to go. So I want to eat at all those. And
which country has the most?
Has the most?
Yeah, France.
No, the most 3 stars is Japan, actually.
And then next,
probably France.
And where does America fit in the food?
America's actually evolving. It's getting more and more great restaurants.
And the weirdest place with a great restaurant in the United States is where on the list?
The weirdest place the most remote place. Oh, on the list.
Yeah.
On the list, there's nothing remote in the United States. It's either San Francisco, Chicago, or New York. There's a great restaurant in a little island called Loomy Island up near Washington, where you actually have to put your car in a ferry to get over there. Great
and
restaurant.
What kind of
food? Nordic food, actually.
Okay. And to young people, so with the traveling, was there any hacks that you use, or you book ahead and use Expedia, or like are there any travel sites that are like secret travel sites?
No, I stick with I try to stick with the same program, so the same airline alliance. So I have status on Star Alliance and One World.
Does it really make a difference? Keeping track of the points?
No, it's if you get to a certain level, you get treated well. So you board the plane first. If you're making a connection, they'll hold a flight for you.
And international, your business.
Yes.
And the best airline in terms of like the coolest plane you've been on?
Singapore Airlines is great because they have the cabins. Emirates has cabins. So those are obviously very cool.
All right, so to wrap up, Latin America for fintech, India, tremendous growth.
Anywhere where there's a growing middle class.
So keep it simple.
And they don't have an infrastructure already, so you're not trying to convert someone from something else. You're just introducing it new to them.
Yeah. And have you been successful with the seed investing? Like beyond us? Like, I mean, is it something that you get excited about? Or are you getting pitched other stuff? Or like, are your kids sending you stuff? Or like, where's the network now? Like, how are you going to position yourself? Are you just going to go with your old network, or what's post-retirement look like?
Yeah, I go with what works. And so social leverage has worked and other things have worked, and I'm going to continue to do that.
I really I never get a chance to spend time with you, so it's great you're out here for the weekend. I appreciate it, and I'm excited for your post banking world.
I'm looking forward to a fun weekend.
All right.